In this video, we are going to see how to add a guide, that is, the pipe is restrained in the lateral direction. So how to insert a guide in the piping model. To do that, first we will add a little bit more of a piping element. So we'll go from 13 to 14, and this time we'll be going 2 meters in that direction. And at node number 14, we would like to add a guide. To add a guide, what we'll have to do is, here it says insert two-sided guiding support. If you click on the drop down, it gives you an option of adding a single direction or a double direction guide. Let's first investigate how a single direction guide looks like. So the window that opens up by Start Prof, it is again the same window, with the only difference that in here it'll give you gap for a guide. So let's go from top to bottom. If you want, you can add the name of the guide if you'd like to, the friction factor if you'd like to change something. If you'd like to add a gap, say horizontal gap of 5 millimeters in both left and right side of the pipe in local axis, you can do that. As discussed in the last video, if you would like to check the allowable loads, you can tick here, and then you can enter all the different load cases or all the different allowable loads that your structural team has given, and Start Prof will be able to check those loads. Right now we'll untick this because we are not checking for that. When you hit on OK, Start Prof gives you the guide. The other thing that Start Prof does is it also adds a vertical support along with guide. Start Prof is smart enough to say or to think that you need a guide support, but it also needs a resting support along with that guide. Now, in certain cases, you would only need left and right or pure guide without any resting support. How to add that, we'll have a look in different video, but right now this is how you add a guide or single directional guide in Start Prof. Now let's have a look at double direction guide. Now we'll see how to add a double directional guide support at node number 14. So first, let's just delete this guide that we have added previously, and now let's click on guide but double direction. Again, all the information remains same: friction factor, name, use gap. In here it asks you what different gaps you would like in horizontal direction and in vertical direction. So say if you want 5 millimeter horizontal gap and 50 millimeter vertical gap, you can do that thing. When you click on OK, Start Prof will add a guide in both directions. So the pipe is free to move actually, but it is restrained in the other two directions. So this is how you add a two-directional guide in Start Prof. Let's assume that you would like to add a guide that is a two-directional guide on a vertical pipe. When you click here on node number 3, and you can go in here, and Start Prof will only give you the option for guide in double direction. Start Prof is smart enough that it has hidden a guide in single direction. The only information you can enter is a guide for double direction. Just click on OK. Again, use the friction factor of 0.3, and then you can enter the horizontal and vertical gap. The only difference here is that the horizontal and vertical gaps are based on the local coordinate system. So let's enter 5 and 50, and just again click on OK. It gives you an information of gap cannot be specified on the horizontal pipe element in a guide. So if you'd like to have a guide with gaps, this is not the way of doing it. There is another way in which we can add gaps in a guide on a vertical pipe, but which we'll have to look at in a different video. Right now I'm just unticking use gap, and I'll click on OK, and as you can see, Start Prof has added a guide to the system. So this is how you add a single direction and a double direction guide in the start prof piping element.